Hello, my dear friends. You're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 31st of December of 2025. Today we have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. But before we start, Happy New 2026. I wish you all the best to you and to your families. So let's go, and let's talk once again about a massive missile and drone attack that's most likely is going to happen within days. The Russians are waiting. What the Russians are waiting for, very difficult to understand. Most likely they're not waiting for anything. They already know when exactly they're going to attack, and the sources are saying that the massive missile attack is going to take place within the next 2 or 3 days. It seems that right now the Russians are focused to collect as much as possible information and to create something like a legal basis why the Russians are going to attack Ukraine with so many drones. For example, once again, let's remind you that 2 days ago, according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, between the 28th and the 29th of December of 2025, Ukrainians attacked the territory of the Russian Federation. More precisely, Ukraine attacked the residence of the President of the Russian Federation in the Novgorod region. So this territory was attacked. That was stated a day ago by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. And right after that, pro-Russian politicals began talking and asking, most likely, the president of the Russian Federation to strike back. The State Duma insists on a taut response following the drone attack on Putin's residence. Such behavior cannot be forgiven. That was stated by the Speaker of the Russian Parliament. And today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation provided this article, this report, where we can see the approximate routes of Ukraine's drones that were flying in the direction of the Novgorod region. The Russians are saying that they managed to destroy 49 drones in the area of the Bryansk region. A drone was destroyed in the Smolensk region. Another important thing that, as you can see, the Russians didn't destroy even a single drone over the Tveri region, which is a very important situation. And then the Russians destroyed everything in the Novgorod region. So we believe that the Russians didn't destroy anything above the Tveri region because the Russians, first of all, at some point, most likely they realized that Ukrainians are going to attack not the city of Moscow, but they were planning to attack indeed the Novgorod region. And I believe that Ukrainians themselves didn't expect that their drones would be able to get the Novgorod region. They supposed that most likely the drones would be destroyed somewhere above Tver region, but the Russians didn't do this. Once again, these are the roads. Yellow, let's say yellow clouds, yellow areas are areas where the drones were destroyed. Once again, 49 above the Bryansk region, a drone was destroyed above Smolensk region, and the rest were destroyed above Novgorod region, and nothing was destroyed above the Tveri region, which is very, very rare. So Russians allowed the Ukrainian drones to fly further, and as soon as they entered the Novgorod region, then only then the Russians destroyed everything. So basically, as soon as the Russians managed to collect enough of proofs, enough of information that the drones indeed were tasked to attack the residence of the President of the Russian Federation, only then they destroyed them. So this is probably another piece of evidence that the Russians are planning to use to probably attack Ukraine with missiles and drone stats, and this attack is going to happen in coming days. Furthermore, Ukraine didn't stop. They attacked Russia today. They used once again dozens of drones, hundreds of drones, 150 drones Ukraine used during the previous night. As you can see, once again, the Ukrainians were attacking in the direction of the city of Moscow, but a few drones managed to get the Novgorod region as well. But most of them this time were destroyed above the Tver region. So this is the situation. But the Russians are saying that as a result of this attack, they managed to damage or even to destroy a substation, and there were problems with the power supply in the Moscow region. So all these things altogether gives the Russians probably the rights, the legal right, or the war right, if we can call this like this, to do whatever they want, and most likely this is going to happen soon. Not between the 31st and the 1st of December and the 1st of January, but maybe maybe the next day. Anyway, let's wait and see. The pro-Western centers and experts are saying that everything is ready, so it appears that the next large-scale combined missile and drone attack will either take place on the morning of New Year's or January 2nd, with missiles likely targeting between 1 a.m. and 8 a.m. Kiev time. This attack will include strategic bombers as well as other types of missiles, so everything is going to happen very soon. So let's wait, of course, and see what is going to be next, but at the same time we are receiving reports that Zelensky is ready to meet with Putin in any format. So as you can see, from one side he is attacking, but from the other side he is saying that he is ready to meet with Putin in any format, and most likely Russia's attack that is going to take place soon will be used by Ukrainians, let's say, to blame Russia that they're not going to probably join or not going to follow any process that can lead to the last peace. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, 24 hours, we received lots of very important updates. And first, let's talk about the Odessa region. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians attacked the Odessa region, and we have lots of videos from this area. So this is the most important video of the previous 24 hours. And here, according to the author of this video, the Russians attacked some object of critical infrastructure, or maybe even of energy infrastructure. Currently, the sources are saying that there are very huge problems with energy, with power supply in this region, and the locals are saying that most likely they will have no power supply during the New Year Eve. But we have already discussed this. The most important thing is not about this. I know that today lots of pro-Russian experts made a very interesting probably conclusions based on the current situation. As we discussed in the previous video, the Russians began bombing and attacking the logistic infrastructure in the Odessa region especially. We pointed a lot to the city of Mayaki, and I would like to remind you that as a result of attacks, the Russians destroyed this bridge, Mayaki Bridge, so that is why the Ukrainians were forced to build pontoon bridges in this area with the purpose to connect the western and the eastern banks of the river of Dniester. So most likely these pontoon bridges would be also destroyed by Russians in coming days or maybe months, but this is not the most important. Today, several pro-Russian sources stated that this bridge was completely destroyed and Ukraine are no longer able to use this bridge for the logistic purposes. Most likely they still have possibilities to use these pontoon bridges, but as we discussed, most likely they would be destroyed as well. And today, several pro-Russian sources made a very interesting conclusion, and they're saying that currently the shortest way how to connect the southwestern part of Odessa region, this one with the most important and powerful port infrastructure through Ukraine, with the mainland, only through the territory of Transnistria. So the pro-Russian experts are saying that currently Ukraine can bring fuel and can bring cargo, supply and support, let's say from the territory of the NATO country, we're talking about Romania, and from the territory of Moldova in the direction of Ukraine, in the direction of the city of Odessa, just through this road. We're talking about M16 road, we're talking about R30 road. So this is the situation and this is the reality. So now if Ukraine wants to restore its logistic possibilities, they need to use this road, and this will replace the bridge in Mayaki that was destroyed and that Ukraine is no longer able to use. So the pro-Russian experts are telling us that maybe Russians destroyed the Mayaki bridge just with one purpose, to force Ukraine and maybe even the NATO countries to intensify their activities around the Transnistria. So because due to complete destruction of this bridge, and most likely Russians can begin attacking and bombing this Zatoka bridge, this situation can force Ukraine and maybe even NATO countries to act more aggressively in this region, because basically Ukraine will have no other option. So this is the thing that the Russians experts are talking about. So if Russians continue attacking the logistic of the Odessa region, most likely in 2026 we will see something like the Transnistria special operation. Now let's move further. And let's discuss the situation in the Zaporozhye direction where the Russians continue their offensive. During the previous 12 hours, the most numbers of updates are coming from the settlement of Stepnogorsk and from the vicinity. The Russians continue their offensive operation. During the previous days, they managed to improve their position significantly in this area. The Russians are moving further. There is a very huge gray zone published by neutral mappers. So this is the situation when we were talking that the distance, possible distance between edge positions of the armored force of the Russian Federation and the settlement of Zaporozhye is already less than 15 kilometers. As for the eastern Zaporozhye direction, probably for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, we haven't received anything from this direction. I would like to remind you that the Russians during the previous days managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Gulay-Polye, to cross the river of Gaichur and to take under complete control several strongholds on the Ukrainian side of the river and to establish control over the villages of Kosovtseva, Zarichne, Pishchane, Andriivka and so on. So, but as of now, the Russians are not moving. It seems maybe they're moving, but once again, for the first time since the beginning of the battle for this territory, pro-Russian resources haven't published anything about additional progress on the ground in this area. Now let's talk about the Dobropolye direction. During the previous 24 hours, as you can see, the map has been changed, has been adjusted. This is the situation by the end of the 30th of December. This is the end of the 31st of December. The Russians, according to pro-Russian sources, answered the settlement of Belitskaya from the southeast. Currently, there are very heavy clashes for the settlement. The Russians established complete control over the territory where the FPV drones that supports and help soldiers on the ground to move further and deeper inside of the city. So this is the situation in this area. The battle has already begun, and this is basically the first building, the first settlement after the end of the Mirnograd military campaign. So this is also the first settlement in the Dobropolye direction. Furthermore, pro-Russian sources stated that Russians also answered the settlement by the name of Novodonbass, also its southeastern part. There are very heavy clashes, and the Russians are planning to move further towards the city of Dobropolye. At the same time, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of reports that Ukrainians tried to counterattack the city of Pokrovsk and positions of the armored force of the Russian Federation in the northern part. Neutral mappers adjusted the maps, and the sources are saying that Ukrainians were tasked to enter the northern part of the settlement and to raise as many as possible Ukrainian flags to the northern part with the purpose just to get immediate victory. This information was already analyzed by pro-Russian sources. We received lots of videos from pro-Russian sources regarding this unsuccessful counterattack from Ukrainian side, and the sources are saying that most of the flags that were established by Ukrainian soldiers were destroyed by Russians. Now let's talk about the city of Konstantinovka. During the previous 24 hours, we received a very important update published by pro-Western and pro-Ukrainian, let's say, expert. According to information we have, currently there are very heavy clashes for the city of Konstantinovka. Difficult in the whole Konstantinovka direction, there seems to indeed be a serious Russian activation in direction. According to preliminary information, things aren't going well for Ukrainian forces. More information later. So the sources are saying that Russians began offensive operation, very powerful offensive operation with the purpose to break through completely the defense of the armored forces of Ukraine and to establish complete control over the city by the name of Konstantinovka. As of now, we don't have lots of updates, but the sources are saying that the situation is very difficult and that the things aren't going well for Ukrainians. As for the Slavian direction, during the previous 24 hours, small changes were recorded to the west of the settlement of Sveta-Pokrovskaya. These are the changes on the ground between the dates, so nothing special. Much more interesting changes are coming from the Svetogorsk direction. During the previous 24 hours, pro-Russian and neutral mappers stated that Russians managed to break through Ukrainian defense to answer the settlement of Sosnovo and to answer the settlement of Svetogorsk. So the Russians are developing their offensive operation in the Svetogorsky forest with the purpose to establish complete control over the territory, and then from the territory of this Svetogorsky forest, the Russians are planning to establish complete FPV drone control over the main supply line MO3 road that goes in the direction of the city of Slaviansk from the city of Kharkiv. So when Russians establish complete physical control over the territory, then most likely the major offensive operation in the direction of the city of Slaviansk will begin. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we received just a video, this one, where we can see how Russians were answering the settlement of Maya Mirova in its part. The Russians, 4 Russian soldiers, this episode was geolocated. This is exactly the place where the Russians were moving. Based on this video, we adjusted the map, but saying the truth, we don't know how exactly the Russians answered there. Either the Russians answered this territory through a pipeline, that there is a pipeline probably, and maybe this is a part of another pipeline operation. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The most important thing is that the Russians are trying to establish control over positions behind the Ukrainian logistic and behind the Ukrainian contingent that is currently located on the territory of the city of Kupiansk. It seems that the Russians are trying to encircle the Ukrainians with the purpose then to finish or to complete the 5th battle for the city of Kupiansk itself. As for the Kharkiv direction, several pro-Russian sources stated about additional progress on the ground in the area of Volchansky Hutory. This information was published by pro-Russian sources. Another important thing is that the Russians intensified their offensive operation in the Sumy direction. Mappers reported that Russians improved their positions around the settlement of Grabovsky. This information was provided by the pro-Ukrainian source. Furthermore, the Russians continue advancing in the direction of the city of Sumy itself, and currently the Russians managed to restore almost complete control over the territories they lost during the Ukrainian counter-offensive operation. So this video was published by pro-Russian sources. Here we can see how Russians were attacking and destroying Ukrainian reinforcements and logistics. Pro-Russian sources adjusted the maps around the settlement of Andreevka, and this information was partially confirmed by the pro-Ukrainian sources. At the same time, I would like to remind you that according to information we have, the chief of the general staff of the armed forces of the Russian Federation inspected the group of forces north with the purpose most likely to give them final orders before moving further, or before, let's say, the Russians continue creation of a buffer zone along the border between Russia and Ukraine. So 2026 is going to be very hot, obviously. And that's it for today. Military with Samurai channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.